Today on CityCast Chicago, we're discussing the ongoing fallout from last week's tragic mass shooting in River North. Plus, is CPS going to be able to pay its bills this summer? And we finish some of Chicago's favorite TV shows. It's Tuesday, July 8th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago is talking about. I'm joined by executive producer Simone Alisea. Morning, my friend. How you feeling this morning?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing very well. It was a very long weekend. I started off last week up in Uptown at Argyle Night Market. I went to Slow Jams on Friday. I was at my mom's house all day Saturday, and then I slept all day Sunday. And so very, very eventful. I was out here in traffic. Not as bad as you were, but I wasn't. I was out here.
I, of course, spent a good portion of our guide to July telling listeners to watch out for various events that are going to back up traffic, and inevitably ended up in the parking lot that was Lakeshore Drive on NASCAR weekend. Mm-hmm. So I guess that goes to show you, even when you know, you don't know.
Who knows? It may be the final year of NASCAR. And like I said, I think earlier this year and even in our guide, I was hoping that they get those sunny days so that there are no excuses. Seems like they got them.
They finished the race before the rain got really bad on Sunday, right? Mm-hmm. So they just skated by, but everyone's mum on that potential 2-year extension. Not sure yet if that's going to come through or if they're going to move to San Diego. We'll see.
Yeah, I think the same dude, they said won 4 of the 6 races during his time here. Shane Van Gisbergen sweeps the Chicago street race weekend. I think he won 4 of the 6 total races during his time here. They got their sunny, hopefully encore way out of here. Don't exercise those next 2 years. I did see a lot of people out there this year. It seemed like more people enjoyed it. So by now, many of us have heard about the tragic and senseless shooting that took place last week at the start of the 4th of July weekend at the album release party for Chicago artist Mellow Bucks. 4 people were killed, 4 remain in critical condition, and 10 others were shot and injured while standing outside Art East Lounge in River North, celebrating with friends during this event. This event, in many ways, was like so many others taking place over the weekend. People coming together for a good time. I had friends who attended this event. It's really heartbreaking when anything ends in tragedy like this. And now families are mourning lost ones, sons and daughters, best friends and boyfriends, the people who attended and who are injured and still fighting for their lives. We saw peace marches in River North over the weekend, balloon releases for some of the victims. But the local alder has really kind of zoned in many ways on scapegoating the venue while so many Chicagoans right now are mourning. Simone, I know you kind of been following Alder Brendan Riley's response to this and really clocking it in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So to catch everyone up in case, you missed the details, as you said, this was for an album release party for Mellow Bucks. She's a rapper. And, this event was essentially a private event. They rented out the venue. The venue is Art Is Restaurant and Lounge. They just opened. They're pretty new. And like I said, they rented out the venue for this party. What happened was actually after the sort of bulk of the party was done. In fact, Mello herself, whose birth name is Melanie Doyle, she had left the venue when a car drove up and pulled out weapons and started opening fire on this crowd that had started to gather outside as the things were winding down. This venue, Art is a restaurant and lounge. It's Black owned, it's queer owned, 2 women who wanted to create a space for creatives and artists to host a variety of events, which they have done since they opened. They were waiting on they were still waiting on a final liquor license. So this party and the restaurant has been operating BYOB. And one thing I thought was really interesting was in the aftermath of this shooting, as you said, Alderman Brendan Riley came out and essentially called for the permanent closure. The spot has been closed by police, called a summary closure, while they're investigating and stuff like that. But he's come out and said that we should revoke their business license. And Riley said in a statement that Block Club reported, quote, despite early assurances from the new restaurant owner that this venue would support local artisans, foster inclusivity, and serve as a hub for connection, creativity, and joy, the owners decided to turn over their venue to promote a new rap album release. It is clear the new operators were dishonest with the city about their plans for the venue and have now contributed to a devastating act of violence. And this really rubbed me the wrong way when I read this in the story. This really, really rubbed me the wrong way because of this idea that somehow promoting a new rap album, again, allowing the venue to be rented when you're an up and coming restaurant, a new business, allowing your venue to be rented by a musical artist is somehow counter to this mission of being a hub of connection and creativity because of the genre of the music, ? It just really, really reeks. And, there were some other profiles of Mello as well and kind of who she was and, her role in the drill scene. She herself has, pleaded guilty to assault charges a few years ago. However, even with all that, this idea that the venue is sort of supposed to predict that someone is going to drive up and pull out a gun and shoot a bunch of people on the street, it's ridiculous.
It's very much in line with some of Brendan Riley's other policies and his other take. When the previous version of this venue was open and had a tragic shooting happen, he moved to get that one closed.
And in fact, there's a late night liquor moratorium in that area as a result of the shooting that you mentioned previously at Hush nightclub. So for example, there are no nightclubs there. Like you can't open a new nightclub in that area because of a mass shooting that had taken place there.
Mm-hmm. He was also one of the alders leading behind the snap curfew that would give police officers pretty much full authority to call a 30-minute snap curfew wherever they thought young people would be gathering. It didn't even have to be that they were gathering there yet. They could call the curfew ahead of time or as teens were starting to gather. And of course, the mayor ultimately vetoed that. And so I wasn't really surprised by Riley's response. Again, I was heartbroken for all of the people who attended this event. I saw videos of people who were there prior to this happening, celebrating with their friends, having a good time inside, outside the venue. And for this to be something that they have to live through and recover for the rest of their lives, I think for him and others to move so quickly to do the thing, we're like, well, of course, rap music was happening there. So of course that's a precursor for violence. It is not surprising at all.
Particularly when I think of a place like River North, where every weekend, probably every day, every night in the summer, if you walk around River North, there's a venue closed for a private party, right? Even the most experienced people who actually do this stuff, people who do violence interruption or violence prevention out on the street, who literally do try to kind of predict conflict, they might be able to see if two groups of people or two people are beefing or are in conflict and might be able to talk to them. But this particular kind of action, as you described it, is senseless. There is no, there is no way to be able to predict that. I think it comes from a place of fear and a place of wanting to, you want to exert some kind of control. And how do you do that? Well, you say, obviously it's a space, the space can't open because they hosted this type of event, and sort of the subline being, we shouldn't have this type of event for this type of music in these spaces, in the city, in this neighborhood, whatever. But that is, on its face, it's discriminatory.
And I ran a search on Art Is Lounge the day before and since they had opened, and all you see are events of just that. Community joy, bringing people together, queer supper clubs, great Creole food, Brandy and Brittany artists coming together, wanting to run an amazing place for the city, for the neighborhood. And again, to move so quickly to scapegoat them, to scapegoat the artists and the people who are celebrating. I think it shows why we need more of the violence interruption that we've talked about over the last 2 months, why we need more people on the front line who have a direct relationship to this, why we need more resources are geared around helping people who survive these, because if not, this story won't be focused on, the survivors and the victims and their families moving forward. It'll be about now this push to legislate not only the closure of this restaurant, but probably larger action in the neighborhood around like events and the type of people who can be throwing them.
It's worth noting too, right? We're talking about this shooting. I think just the volume, right? There's so many people injured and killed. I think the timing of it right before July 4th weekend, which, as we know, tends to be a weekend where there is a lot of shootings in Chicago. There were 2 other mass shootings, one during a 4th of July celebration in Back of the Yards that left 7 people in serious or critical condition, another where 4 people were wounded in Little Village in a drive-by shooting. It's always tragic, right? Every single one of these events, because again, when what you are seeing is people doing the thing we all want to do, gathering over a holiday weekend to enjoy people, to enjoy the sun, to enjoy some time together. And then they are interrupted by this tragedy, by violence, by gunfire. And it is such a hard, and I think too, it's even hard to talk about in the context of, so for example, when you like go and read the stories, looking over what happened this weekend, the other thing you'll see is that compared to other 4th of July weekends in Chicago, is fewer people who were injured or killed in shootings compared to other 4th of Julys. But that doesn't make any of these incidents any less meaningful, any less tragic, or any less heartbreaking.
My thoughts remain with the families, the people who were there, the people who have to move on after this. Is as I know, this is going to be a long road for so many of these families. Chicago Public Schools fiscal year began last week with a whopping $734 million deficit, which includes that pesky $175 million pension reimbursement to the city we have long talked about and covered on the pod. Simone, as the district begins closing that gap, we have already seen over 160 layoffs, hiring freezes, and concerns about teacher back pay. You said it earlier. It just seemed like they can't pay their bills right now.
It is. It's really rough. And I know we've covered this really closely and it feels like we're covering it a lot, but I think it's becoming more and more alarming kind of with each development that comes out and we're not seeing a fix. Mm-hmm. So let's start with the layoffs, which were reported shortly before the start of the fiscal year. As you said, 161 employees were laid off. Many of them were crossing guards. It was made up the bulk of the layoffs. Another big chunk came from the school district's central and network offices, and then 7 people who are represented by the Chicago Teachers Union. And in addition to that, the district announced in sort of that same round that they were not going to fill 200 vacant positions.
Did they say how much that would close this gap at all?
Chalkbeat reported $150 million in savings for this fiscal year. But I don't know how that, like, if you can just subtract that from the 734, I don't know if that math is quite all lined up yet. And it's complex because, and that kind of gets us to this other thing about teacher back pay. So as part of the CTU contract that they finally reached an agreement on in the spring, part of that included back pay for teachers, raises, that trace back to, because they were without a contract for a year, right? But the district is saying, like, we might not be able to pay those raises until September. They were supposed to kind of get them done, like, soon. You don't want to wait, like, a month into the school year before you get your back pay, right? After they've already waited for a year. It's not a great look, at the very least. At best, it's not a great look. And the reasoning for that has to do with sort of the way the district gets infusions of cash. And so, they have a couple lines essentially a couple lines of credit. They take out these short-term loans. They do that apparently every year, but they are already spending through that. They're essentially reaching their credit card limit. And then they get 2 other infusions of cash through property taxes, right? We know that property taxes go to fund school district. However, Cook County is having delays in its property tax bills because of some tech upgrades that they're making. And because of delays at Cook County, it means CPS, that payment to CPS is also going to be delayed.
Like $90 million we talking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, the district is like, that's the money we were going to use to pay for back pay, but we're not going to get that money until August. And so we can't pay you until September. Like, everything about it really is like, and I say
they moving like a Chicago freelance artist who's just like waiting for this gig's money and this gig's money to pay for this bill.
They got groceries on the credit card, and they got, you know what I mean?
I feel it.
There's a part of me that I kind of empathize with this experience on an individual level. However,
it was supposed to get some more money from the state and from the city.
You were like, count on that stimulus check, and then the third check never came. You thought they were going to cancel student loans. They didn't cancel student loans. And I get it. On an individual level, I get it. But when you're the 4th largest school district in the country, again, at best, not a good look. At worst, who knows, right? We have an interim CEO right now, and, she's working with the school board to sort of frantically figure out how to fill this gap, whether does that mean more layoffs potentially? This budget fight has also kind of reignited the conversation around school closures, right? And there has been a moratorium on school closures in place for the past 10 years or so, but that is going to be up in 2027. There's sort of an extension that was placed too as part of the transition to an elected school board, but that's going to be up in 2027. And Chalkby had another really great report talking about, how many of Chicago's schools, by the numbers, are underutilized. There are a lot of them that, should house 300 students that only house.
I was going to say 1,000 that should house 1,000 that only have 100.
Only have 100, right? Like, closing schools would certainly save the city money. However,
hey, Simone, you said that one. I ain't say that out loud.
It's true. It's true. There's no two ways about that. In the same way that reducing anything reduces money, right? That just is true. However,
there is zero appetite.
For good reasons, right? I think there's a good reason there's zero political appetite to close schools. After the closure of 50 schools in 2013 under Rahm Emanuel, that was a deeply traumatic event in the psyche of Chicago and Chicago public schools.
Because even as we talk about a school that should host 1,000 that has 10% of that, that's still 100 families. That's still 100 students, and that's still teachers and staff members.
And again, this story it's interesting because it gets into that of nobody wants to lose the school that they go to, their community, it's their hub. Closing schools in the sort of grand scheme of things is also not good. Because again, not only just because they can be hubs for different neighborhoods, but the fact that our enrollment has declined so precipitously is sort of bad news. It really can destroy communities and make things really hard. And, for kids who have to change schools, that can be a really difficult transition.
That are sitting abandoned in neighborhoods across the city.
And right, we've already seen sort of failures to repurpose those buildings in some places, into things that would help the community in lieu of a school, right? If it's not going to be a school, maybe it could be something else. And there have been debates in particularly South and West Side neighborhoods across the city. And again, you're seeing sort of the same patterns in sort of which schools currently, when we talk about under enrollment, it's in these same neighborhoods. And part of that has to do with patterns of out-migration from the city and where people are going to and who's moving out of the city and things like that. It's a really tough. I don't envy the future school board of 2027 or the future school CEO of CPS who will be confronted head on with this issue, assuming these budget problems remain, which there's no reason to think that they're going to be resolved. Again, unless somebody just gives CPS a bunch of money, the budget issues will remain. And the question, again, there will be questions about layoffs. And if those layoffs are going to, cut more into CTU ranks than they already have, where else those cuts are going to come from? Or again, will there potentially be school closures in the next few years?
As you mentioned, interim CEO Macklin King and board president Sean Harden are hopeful that they can still find a solution in the next couple of weeks to at least get teacher back pay solved. But a lot of school communities are anxious about what other layoffs, what other cuts they could face. So last week, we talked about some of Chicago's favorite TV shows either starting up or coming back for another season, including things like Ironheart, The Bear, The Chi. As of right now, The Chi has been renewed for season 8. Matching, I think, the second longest Showtime program of all time. Bear's been renewed for season 5, and we haven't heard about
Has it been renewed for season 5?
It has.
I didn't see that. Oh,
it
okay.
has.
Okay.
And Ironheart has not yet been renewed for season 2. I know that you have finished Ironheart and The Bear. I am right there alongside you. My family was watching The Chi all weekend. Anytime I went inside, they were watching The Chi. Let's start with the newest show on the Chicago roster, Ironheart, starring Dominique Thorne as Riri Williams. Let me get your thoughts. It came out in 2 batches of 3.
I watched it all at once. I watched it over 2 days, and boy, delightful from the very beginning. That I was like, oh my God, do I like Marvel again? Am I like into Marvel stuff again? Just Dominique Thorne giving a powerhouse performance. I would watch her on screen all day. And also it felt on the sort of Chicago meter, right? Since that's part of our thing. Very Chicago, super Chicago.
It did.
The plot of Ironheart, as we said, follows Riri Williams, who is sort of she's a young Black woman from the south side of Chicago who has a penchant for building things. And she has been working on an iron suit similar to Iron Man's suit.
Tech genius, a la Tony Stark, just without the billions of dollars.
Without the billion, yes, it's exactly how she's described. And we come upon her as she's being kicked out of MIT for many reasons. She gets expelled, but she steals one of the suit prototypes that she's been working on, manages to fly back to Chicago, and then starts to rebuild it. She falls in with some, how would you describe them, Jacoby? Sort of an Ocean's 11 kind of.
Yeah, like a group of self-righteous, we gonna fight
Robin Hoodie. I mean, he's literally called the Hood.
Powers, yeah, the tech powers that be, led by Anthony Ramos's character, the Hood. Again, I think made up a very great ensemble. One of which was an actress in Brown Girls, Sonia Dennis.
And of course, we find out the Hood is corrupted by some other magical powers and so on and so forth. I loved it. My biggest issue was the ending. Yeah,
we both had the same ending. And it wasn't the fact that, like many MCU heads, folks have been clamoring for, spoiler alert. If
spoiler,
you don't want to hear, this is where you should stop listening.
Skip, forward.
Move. People have been clamoring for Mephisto to make his way into the MCU for years now. And we both agreed, right actor, correct performance.
Yes, beautiful performance.
I'm even okay with it coming out in the TV show.
Yes, agreed.
I think you have to lift up your properties with big stakes if they are going to matter in the long run, if you're going to encourage people to not just go for the big movies. I did not like the implications of the very ending scene and the credit scene. The idea that Riri and also Zelma, a powerful young magician in this world, these two young Black girls would somehow be hoodwinked again, fantastic performances from Sacha Baron Cohen as Mephisto and Anthony Ramos as Hood. I didn't like the implication that that's where we left.
My issue is I really wanted Riri never really got a chance to be a hero in the show. She never really got it, because she's sort of falling in with the wrong crowd. There's this great storyline of sort of betrayal and friendship with Ezekiel Stain, right? That I think was really well done, but complicated. It was not sort of a straight ahead hero story. And I just really wanted Ironheart, the hero, to have a moment where she got to be a hero.
I do want to give some flowers to, again, a couple of Chicago folks, Matthew Elam playing Xavier, and then Lyric Ross playing Natalie Washington.
Oh my God. Also a lovely performance.
Absolute. Playing her since past friend, reanimated AI. So amazing. Evergreen Park, Homewood roots, family all across the Chicagoland. Shout out to Lyric Ross. Gave a fantastic performance. But the little things I wouldn't nitpick. From a Chicago perspective, the only thing I nitpick is the apartments those look like they were shot on Atlanta sound stages.
Yeah, the interiors in particular. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for
they
sure.
got the Wicker Park, Lakeside.
That porch was so wrong.
Yeah, we both finished The Bear.
Yes.
Times was slow, but I thought the beats of season 4, I thought season 4 for me was probably the funniest. The ending wasn't too off of our prediction.
No, not even a little bit.
Overall.
Yeah.
Not too off.
Really the trick is we thought more was gonna happen than actually happen. Mm-hmm. So, right, The Bear, again, in case you've been living under a rock, follows Chef Carmy returning to Chicago after his brother takes his own life, tries to keep his family together, takes over the family beef stand. Over the course of 3 seasons, turns it into a fine dining restaurant. Season 4 picks up
The Beef to the Bear.
The Beef to the Bear.
The story of Carmy's attempt to run away from all of his problems.
Basically, yeah. And season 4 picks up after a very bad review in the Chicago Tribune comes out about the restaurant.
Every time you go, it's a different menu, a different feel.
And the restaurant is hemorrhaging money.
And you can feel the tension from the back and the front.
Yes, exactly. And so that's where the show picks up. People complain about The Bear being slow. I gotta say, I find it very refreshing, actually. As someone who I watch quite a lot of television. And there is such a tendency, particularly in the age of streaming, there is such a tendency to pack so much in and to always end with a cliffhanger and to always have, to keep energy really, really, really high. Mm-hmm. I find The Bear's sort of slow pace. Everything is very visual. It's actually not as dialogue heavy as you would expect for a show that's that slow. It's very visually focused.
I would argue at times the dialogue is some of the most stunted part. But it feels more realistic in the fact that real life conversations are messier and incomplete.
In this season, I think weaknesses in the writing showed a lot more than it has in previous seasons, particularly in dialogue writing, and particularly in Jeremy Allen White's performance.
Yes.
Jeremy Allen White's performance, and I mean, we've said this for a long time, that he's not the best character. Like, I don't know that he's the one you're really supposed to be rooting for necessarily.
I actually think you're rooting for him maybe to be okay, but you're really rooting for
you want him to be fine.
At this point.
You want him to find love. I mean, that scene where Sugar is like, you're capable of experiencing this type of love. Like, that's how I feel watching this show.
But the entire time I was more excited for Sydney's scallop and watching her in a house with her cousin Marcus winning an award,
like best new chef or emerging chef, something like that. Yeah.
Or Tina getting her pasta time down, or Richie feeling like he's doing enough.
Richie, I have gone full 180.
100%. I don't think I've felt as much of one for a character from season 1 to a season 4 as I have with him.
I will say too, our newsletter editor Emmy Mack wrote a review of The Bear, sort of a personal essay. It's great. You should take a read. It's kind of fun because I think we all come to it with different things. And she found the wedding episode very corny. She thought it was cheesy. She's like, I had to pause it. It was like cringy. I loved it. Hook, line, sinker, every beat. They got me too, because I fully went into it thinking it was going to be another Fishes. I was going to be stressful. I was all tense at the beginning. And then they all went under the table. And I was like, oh, it's so sweet.
Sydney and Donna's conversation. She's just talking about how she realizes she doesn't really know her children or hasn't been a part of their lives. But she maintains, she sits still as long as she can in that moment. I was even okay with like the Carmi, Claire. I was cool with all of the corniness in that episode.
Claire coming back, is it a little contrived? Potentially, you know, who doesn't? Obviously, he needs a woman to feel better about his sad boy life. But it's fine because she's so delightful that I love watching her. So, I can't really complain. Speaking of spoilers, ending again, spoiler, forward. The big reveal is, of course, that Carmi plans to leave the restaurant, leaves it in the care of Sydney, Richie, and Sugar. In the last episode, which takes place entirely in a back alley, which I liked. I thought that was a nice little nod.
Loved it. All while in the background, Ibrahim has essentially slowly figured out how the restaurant is going to be financially solvent and saved moving forward, as everyone has not really been paying attention to his window, to his business venture, to his mentorship that he's been going through. And but I do appreciate how much time we as the audience has spent with that, because we know what none of those people in the back alley know.
It's a great piece of dramatic irony. It's a beautiful little piece of dramatic irony. And right, what we're referring to, Ibrahim is sort of about to embark on a plan to franchise the beef window concept across Chicagoland.
Yeah, they haven't brought it to the owners and talked through it, but from what we've learned, the what's keeping the bear open, even in some sense, as they're bleeding money, has been the beef window, which low overhead, not many staff members, and not even open the entire time that the restaurant is open. And so
I gotta say, I love this as a metaphor, right? Because the whole thing is that Carmi is trying to reinvent the beef, which is the symbol, again, of all the family. When we get to in the first season, it's all chaotic and everyone's yelling and there's no system. And his whole thing is, I want to just reinvent it and make it what it is. I went to New York. I studied under the best chefs in the world. I went to
Denmark. I put myself through loads of stress and what didn't he say? He had kidney stone or something, or hernia, something?
Or I thought it was an ulcer, maybe.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Ulcers, through sleepless nights, through
smoking every cigarette that has ever existed in the world.
Bouts of dissociation where he's self-harmed.
And when we create the bear, we're going to change the menu every night, right? We're going to do, because it's always better, always perfect. And he thinks he has to fight everything the bear was. Season 3 is him and his demons, just one after the other. By the time we get to season 4, now Carmi is finally starting to get to know his demons.
Yep.
And also at the same time, what we learn, that the thing that's keeping the bear alive is the beef. The beef isn't dragging the bear down. The bear is Carmi. The beef isn't dragging him down. The beef is what's keeping him alive. And he realizes he needs to let go of both to figure out who Carmi is. The metaphor is gorgeous. I love it. I'm here for it. This is exactly what I want in my media. Give me something meaty to chew on.
Yeah. I have not watched the entirety of The Chi, but I am happy that for the Chicago actors in those writer rooms that 8th season is forthcoming. Chicago will take as many shows on TV as possible to keep as many of us acting on screen, working behind the camera, doing hair and makeup, building sets, being PAs. It's been a hard couple years, and so it's good to see shows getting the green light for more and more seasons in this city. And I'm just hoping maybe you'll catch me on one of them soon enough. Maybe you catch me on one of them. I want to give a huge thank you to our executive producer, Simone Alisea. Always a good time, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Jacoby.
Before we get out of here, we got a neighborhood shout out. Our CityCast Chicago neighbors, aka our members, have the opportunity to show some love to some local businesses, groups, and we read them out on the podcast, throw them in our newsletter. Today's shout out comes from Emily C., who's shouting out Pilates Advantage in Uptown, saying it's an amazing studio inclusive of all abilities, ages, and body types. Super cute space too. Thank you, Emily. We really appreciate it. I've been seeing a lot of Pilates on my timeline recently. I also want to thank some new members, Sophie M, Don H, Karina C, and Janie L. We really appreciate y'all taking time to support the podcast, support this newsletter. 4 years in means the world to this entire team, especially from me and Simone, the OGs of the group, who've been here with many of y'all for the entire time making it through. We appreciate y'all for showing up and showing out for us. Hey, and if you willing, and if you got it like that, you want to throw us $10 a month to keep this whole thing going, we'd appreciate that. We also got some other perks we throwing in, like ad-free listening, access to members-only events, and for y'all who are considering becoming neighbors, just go ahead, go on, do it. You know, even you want to dip a toe in, test it out for, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, go and give it that long free trial. If you're listening and you want to join, please do it at membership.citycast.fm. Some good news. This weekend's African and Caribbean International Festival of Life will be returning to Washington Park this weekend. I know we reported that it was going to be moving to the South Loop, but unfortunately their permits were denied. Organizers are understandably frustrated by this expensive last minute change, and they say they are committed to making sure the 3-day festival runs as smoothly as possible. So they really need us to show up for them, y'all. So please, if you can, visit our show notes, check the link, and make some time over this weekend. As always, we appreciate you for listening and reading. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. In the meantime, in between time, head over to chicago.citycast.fm. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace.
Bring cringe back. Get cringe. Get cringe with your friends. Like, what is it? It's let the homies kiss. Let the homies be cringe.